on to our next panel, which you very well led into, which is how our past successes help us enlighten the future. Obviously, they lead very straightly from one to the other. So, Max, I'll hand over to you to introduce our next speakers.
Jen, thanks so much. I think Maria de Fatima just did a perfect sort of summing up of the sessions so far that we had. It is like one single big red thread that runs through. And in particular, what was nice that she made the link, like you asked, Jen, saying what are our good examples, the best cases that we had fighting the pandemic, and what is the silver lining? And she combined the two. And actually, this is all the idea of the next session. But before we go into the next session, we play a short video so that the colleagues, and Adrian is already joining me here, is setting up his place. Please, set off the video.
The need for trustworthy digital technologies has never been greater. And over the last few years, the European Commission has put a lot of effort into making Europe fit for the digital age. For actors in the digital economy to be able to cooperate across borders, you need common EU-wide technical standards, so IT systems in different countries are compatible.
Well, the EIDAS regulation came about because more and more member states regulated trust services, meaning any service that establishes trust or identity-related solutions, and to make that happen in a way that is interoperable across Europe.
But regulation is not enough. To help bring about the digital single market, the European Commission has been providing free, ready-made solutions for EU governments and businesses that ensure they are aligned with the standards. Programs like the Connecting Europe Facility and ISA² have been rolling out solutions for the last 5 years. We call these solutions building blocks. They are services to support the adoption of open and reusable digital standards. This can mean sample software or technical specifications, but also support to implement them into IT systems.
I think that these two words says them all. They are really blocks that can support the member states to build their own public services, putting together some of those blocks.
But how did these solutions come about? How were they developed? It all started with large-scale pilots within the member states. The outcomes of the pilot projects were incubated within EU programs like ISA² in order to become a fully mature, interoperable digital solution that could then be funded and deployed by the Connecting Europe facility.
Recently, for example, we started the blockchain, just take one. So we supported through the ISA² program to experiment in this area. And once this was a bit looked at and we saw the high interest from the member states, this was brought to CEF, and then the EPSI building block was born and will continue in the future.
Anyone can deploy one of the European Commission solutions or build one of their own. To help governments and businesses check whether their solutions are interoperable, CEF and ISA² may help with conformance testing or evaluate whether they comply with the European Interoperability Framework via IMAPS. In its 2016 e-Government Action Plan, the Commission introduced the once-only principle. Its aim? To create a truly unified, simplified digital experience for EU citizens and businesses.
The once-only principle is basically the idea that citizens have to provide evidence only once and not several times, and that this evidence is then exchanged in the background between administrations, even across borders in Europe.
The once-only principle will see all of these reusable solutions come together to make digital interactions with governments more convenient for citizens, even across borders.
The OOP is the keystone that finalizes the achievements that we have brought about with the building blocks so far, and in that it will be a great step forward.
To bring together different public administrations around Europe and beyond with citizens and businesses. So really make the work of everybody and the life of everybody much easier.
And welcome back, dear friends and colleagues out there, DigitALL Public, ready for the next session. We just come from a session where senior representatives from the Commission, and in particular the Portuguese presidency, spoke about the digital transformation effort in Europe, making the link between the past and the future, showing us the silver lining. That's where we ended on. And we have the man who can introduce, together with his colleagues, the next panel, exactly what the details of the silver lining would be. Because Adrian, Dusa, warm welcome to you here, will moderate now. It's a session that looks back to the tiny beginnings of something that later became a building block, later became a new political or legal initiative, how things built together, the two programs, the interoperability solutions, the more experimental bit, and the Connecting Europe facility, developing building blocks reusable across the world. And who else than Adrian would be best placed to do that, I dare say, because he was involved up the sleeves into the construction of some of these things. He will tell us about this. He's a long-standing interoperability, digital government, Connecting Europe expert and doer, somebody who doesn't just talk but just does the stuff. And so I ask you now, please, Adrian, get your things done, get into your session, introduce your speakers.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, everybody. It feels indeed like coming home, and looking forward to a very interesting 1 hour together with you. You heard from the Commissioner this morning and just now from our senior managers how it all started with experimentation, but it is finally the funding basis of the digital single market and having our lives improved by it. I will take just a moment to retrace, as you said, the beginnings from the large-scale pilots, where we were looking at sectorial improvements like in e-procurement or e-health, and how we saw there are building blocks which could build across and which could improve the delivery of public services in a digital manner across Europe. Of course, large-scale pilots was experimentation, as you rightly said, and experimentation, once ended, needs an effort of packaging, of bringing it up to production level, which happened with the help of the ISA and ISA² programs. And then 2014 saw indeed the creation of the CEF telecom program, CEF Digital, where we took the time to take these production-ready components and modules to make them really deployable across Europe and to support these deployments via various services. I will now introduce the members of the panel, and then we'll move on hearing their interesting take on this. I'll have to quickly look at my notes. First, to join the virtual room is Joao Bacelar, who is the executive manager of the European University Foundation and working on the modernization of the European higher education area. Then we have Buyle from the Flanders Information Agency, where he is an information architect and very much involved with strategy at DigitALL Flanders. And then we have Mr. Jesùs Camy from Imola 3 project and associated with the European Land Registers Association. And Carlos Gonzalez Ruiz, information systems architect at the European Commission, Taxation and Customs Directorate General. And last but not least, of course, we have with us Liljemo, who is the head of the Stakeholder Management Office of the CEF Digital Program, who is, I would say, challenging Max, really the best placed person to wrap it up and to look at what the impact of CEF Digital was. Okay, I would propose that we start, but before starting, I would like to know, and I guess also our panelists would like very much to know, whether here we are preaching to the converted, or there are many people that are on a discovery journey during this session. So for this end, we will use the interactivity of the platform that is hosting this digital event, and we'll have a poll that you will be finding, I'm told, in the right of your screen. And the questions that we want you to answer are whether you are already using interoperability solutions and building blocks in your projects. And you would have the three options, which are quite straightforward: yes, no, or unsure. So that being said, I would propose that we move on to the opening remarks of our distinguished panelists, who I invite to stick to the 5 minutes that we agreed before this session, for the benefit of interactivity and question and answer, which will be most interesting for the participants. So I will start with Joao as order of introduction. You have been working with the improvement of student experience across Europe. Perhaps you could tell us, in the 5 minutes you have allocated, how these solutions that we'll be talking about helped you in this endeavor. Thank you.
Certainly, Adrian. Thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here today with the colleagues supporting key tenets such as interoperability, and let's jump right in then. So at European University Foundation, my team and myself, we focus a lot of our energy on the improvement of the Erasmus program. I'm not going to explain what this is. I think we've all heard about it. It's one of the European Union's great success stories. But what you might not know is that with the new program, which starts this year, there's going to be a brand new digital infrastructure underpinning it. Now, some components of this infrastructure are focused on institutional users, such as universities, and others are actually student-facing. And so with the My Academic ID project, which was supported by the Connecting Europe facility, what we've done was to try to address the student authentication in a way that was scalable and secure, and putting EIDAS at the heart of our designs. So far, so good. The trick is that the Erasmus program also goes well beyond the European Union member states. And so we had to think a little bit out of the box to ensure adequate coverage. So what we actually did was to bootstrap several identification and authentication systems so that they could work as one. And so we've done this with something called the European Student Cards, with the EIDAS, of course, as I mentioned, but also with EduGain, which is a federated authentication framework, which is used by universities from around the world. And so here you can start discerning the key outline of what we were trying to achieve, which was to link identities of natural persons with the relevant academic identities, and to create a kind of a continuum between systems that used to operate in silos, essentially trying to combine their strengths, trying to get maximum impact out of this. Now, as if this was not enough, we had another challenge that was very interesting to tackle, and that it's part of the reason why I'm here today, because we knew that when we were working on this in 2019 and 2020, that the challenge of bringing things in production that you've mentioned was going to be very pressing, because from 2021, the My Academic Authentication solution would be at the fingertip of millions of students. And so the ability to scale the work that we did in a robust manner was one of most important functional requirements. Now, fast forward, the good news is that this solution is already powering something called the Erasmus Plus app, which is the single point of entry for students into the new Erasmus program. And there are several other platforms which are connected to it, such as the Online Learning Agreement, the PhD Hub, which are also powered by this new take on student authentication. And the idea is that together these tools will radically cut down on the paperwork for exchange students, as well as improve the quality of the information of the guidance that we can pass on to them. In the meantime, My Academic ID is also underpinning the development of a new DSI, a new digital service infrastructure, which is very exciting. And before the end of 2021, there will be more functionalities added to this young but already very powerful digital ecosystem. I'm not going to spill the beans on this quite yet because they will be launched by Commissioner Maria Gabriel, so I don't think she would approve if I would reveal too much today. So I would end just by saying that the CEF funding that we've benefited from was not just pivotal in delivering solutions that were fit for purpose for fairly complex problems, but it was also a fertile ground for improvements that we know that will have a systemic impact in our sector, in higher education. For example, one of the things that was carried out in this project was developing a European student identifier standard. And now there's been some interest into upstaging this and upscaling it into having a worldwide student identifier made in the EU, if you will. So I reckon the sky is the limit, particularly when we have strong foundations to build on, which is something that we've benefited tremendously from. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Joao. I was playing some kind of mental bingo as you were speaking, and you were hitting all the spots. So I was almost shouting bingo over here. So thank you very much. It was an excellent start to our panel. Now I would turn to Raf, and moving on from the student experience to citizen experience, could you share with us what you encountered and the way that you approach the challenges linked to the citizen profile? Thank you.
Hi, Adrian, and thank you for your question and for having me. Now, in Belgium, the different governmental levels are responsible for different policy domains, which causes fragmentation of the public services. Therefore, back in 2015, the idea was to create a digital assistant, which aims to facilitate a one-stop government in Flanders by creating an integrated user experience for our citizens. Now, imagine we had several hundred of websites, which were portals from different governmental levels. So this was often a maze for our citizens. And due to the autonomy, it was not an option to create like one master portal. So therefore, we did not opt to create a single entry point which could integrate all services, but we opted for the concept of a virtual window by integrating a smart digital assistant in each portal, in each governmental portal. This concept we refer to as the Flemish citizen profile. Now, these efforts were a first step towards a more proactive public services where citizens do not have to take any actions to receive a government service. So often referred to as a no-stop shop for the citizen. Now, which challenges did we had? Well, we created an overview of all interactions of the government by means of status information and notification. This means that me as a citizen have, regardless of the channel or the website, an overview of all services. Also, we have an insight in all the information that the government manages about us. We can access it through secure services using our electronic identity card, which of course is ADAS compliance, those services, and we get personalized support. Now, this vision, meanwhile, has become reality as all Flemish citizens now have access to their Flemish citizen profile via the different portals government manages. So this implies I can get a birth certificate via the portal of a city of Kortrijk while I'm living in another city. So it's really a no wrong door approach. Now, we faced a lot of challenges creating this citizen profile, and therefore the building blocks from the Commission were really crucial in creating this citizen profile. Because one of the goals was to link all the data from the citizens, as the data is decentralized and managed by over 70 regional agencies. So therefore we have built an architecture on the building blocks of the web, and we applied the European interoperability framework, as we had challenges on the level of technical, semantical, organizational, and also legal interoperability. On the semantic level, we applied the best practices of the ISA core vocabularies, which provided for us a flexible and extensible model to describe all the public services. So therefore, the core public service vocabulary was the cornerstone of the Flemish citizen profile. We also applied other vocabularies, including the core person vocabulary, so describe a person in a context-neutral way and link all the information to the citizen, but also links with organizations where we applied the core organization vocabulary. Now, the ISA core vocabularies are like a glue between our different decentralized agencies, both on the local level and on the regional level. And by linking all the data, we created an integrated experience for the citizens, as they now, regardless of the channel, can easily access the services, where we, of course, by linking all the data together, create a once-only experience for our citizens in Flanders in Belgium.
Thank you, Raf. Very, very interesting, and looking forward to hearing more during our Q&A later. Moving on now from the citizen experience in a wide context, an overview of the citizen file, and in the same time, zooming out and looking at the European level, I invite Jesùs to share the scope and context of his project, and how, of course, the same question, the building blocks or interoperability solutions were leveraged in this, looking at the land registry interoperability at EU level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for your kind introduction. I am pleased to share with you this panel. IMOLA project is the acronym of Interoperability Model for Land Registry, and the main objective pursued with this approach is to get one harmonization of the land registry information, because the current situation is that each member state provides the land registry information according to his own structure and format, and furthermore, the legal meaning in each case is determined by the national law. Given that the Article 345 of the European Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, the competencies regarding to the land registry and the property right are out of their competencies. This scenario is also more complicated because there isn't any common access point for applying to get this land registry information. According to this, the objective were very clear: to create one single access point for accessing to this land registry information through e-Justice portal, and created a common template to disclose this land registry information. In this moment, all the participants are in the project on voluntary basis, but in the fight directive to prevent money laundering, there is in the Article 32 some provision to achieve both scope, the interconnection of the land registry and also the harmonization of the land registry information. The high-level requirements were determined by the main scope to get a common semantic model in the land registry domain. The main goal is to develop one European land registry document, DLRD, to provide this harmonized information, and also to create one land registry knowledge organization system hosting all the metadata to enrich this information to make it more understandable. And finally, to open a window from the Justice portal to this knowledge organization system to give information to the European citizen and legal practitioner to know what is the legal meaning of this concept in the different national system. so that the requirement has been semantical and technical. From the semantical point of view, we need to connect this common semantic model that is one abstraction with a specific national concept, using the one very innovative semantical artifact, the pivot 10, that are a container that bridge both concepts, the abstraction of the property right semantic model with the specific national system. The assignation of the attribute using the formal methodology that has been introduced in this project by the Trento University, along with the Maastricht and the Carlos III University of Madrid. Their collaboration has been a crucial pilot to develop this project. And finally, other very important issue has been to update this new semantic model by a very innovative learning and training through one Moodle platform. From the semantic side, we have developed one customized multi-user web platform to provide a support to the contact point, the European Land Registry Net, to create this e-core repository, and to develop one XML schema that will be the interface to interoperate among this e-course repository and the different member states. The benefits are clear. The LRD a common template to provide an harmonized land registry information that which is made up of the 3 ISA² building block, the location core vocabulary that connect the land registry information with the SPIRE directive, the person core vocabulary that connect with the civil and population register, and business core vocabulary that connect with the BRIS and beneficial ownership register. This ISA² main building block has been completed with one specific content vocabulary developed for property right and land register, that is the ELRA repository. And the conclusion is that the ELRD is an interoperable artifact that not only will be used for disclose this land registry information, but also to provide the interoperability with other set of data related with the land registry field, supporting the European Union policies such as the environmental issue or anti-money laundering, that also allow the implementation of artificial solutions. The key messages from the IMOLA project is the accessibility of land registry information, the reusability of ISA² main building block, interoperability of data, and finally the quality of data based on the support of the European Land Registry Net. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesús. Very interesting insights, and of course, as you were saying, the move from just interconnecting to giving meaning and then exporting these meanings to other business areas is something that we are striving for, this level of reusability. And we are joined now by Carlos, the colleague from DG Taxation and Customs, that will be telling us about how these solutions and building blocks have come together to help the European Union manage better the customs risk management in the import control system that he's been managing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share this, what has been the biggest challenge in my career, or at least it was until I was asked to explain it in 5 minutes. But I will try to focus on the main point of it, where how a CEF building block actually help us to, instead of building an interoperability nightmare, and build it actually an interoperability miracle, if I will call it. The main point here, if I may enter into the context, is that in the EU customs perspective and policy, I don't know if you understand, there are 5 processes that are key. You have entry, import, transit, export, and exit. The main point here is that we always talk about the million of euros that enter in goods in the European Union, but sometimes we forget that it's not always about money, and it's not only about money. the most important aspect is those goods that are entering into the European Union. We need to make sure that they are safe in many perspectives. So that we need to be able to check the security before they are brought into the European Union. And of the 5 processes I was talking about, ICS2 is about the very first one, entry. And the idea is to receive basic information of the goods, the consignments that are going to be transported in the European Union, eventually imported, and make a risk assessment on the possibility of bringing, I don't know, it could be weapons, it could be another kind of smuggling, veterinary goods that are not safe and things like that. So that we need to be able, and the member states that have the operational responsibility need to have the information in order to make a proper risk assessment. So, and that's what I like most of this system, of this approach, is that it's not about money, it's about security and safety. So, but the main point here is that, as I said, we need to receive information from the economic operators, and that information has to come from all the actors in the logistics complexity that exists in the world. So it's not, when it's an importation or an entry of goods, it's not only one economic operator that is involved. You have a carrier, you have a consignor, you can have a consignee. There are many actors, and you need to have a bit of information of each one of them, because in many cases they cannot share that information, has a commercial value that cannot be this confidential. So that's the main problem that we have to solve. But that comes together with the option or the situation that in the trans-European systems, as we call them, with the member states, as the member states have the responsibility, is usually them, the member states, that set up the interfaces with economic operators. But that means that every economic operator has to confront 27 different interfaces in order to be able to send the information, which is makes it really complex for them. So that the idea was to be able to set up a single interface where the economic operators can hit, and they know always is the same standards, the same specifications, and the same methods in order to exchange that information, and they don't have to set up 27 different interfaces to do that. So the most important thing here is that we set up this interface, and of course we brought together several economic operators, that the most important ones that are going to participate in this exchange of information. And we say, okay, how we are going to solve this? How we can solve this in the best way? And that's where e-delivery came into hand, because we were looking for something that, of course, has to be a standard interface, and it has to be an international standard that we know is accepted internationally, and it doesn't sound funny, it's not strange for anybody, and is well known and understood in the IT industry, if I can call it like that. Then, of course, we need common specifications that are solid, are stable, and that we know that work. Okay, and of course, it needs to be something that is modern, because we don't know to become old in 2 years, so that we have to change it, and has to, of course, comply with the current situations on security and the requirements that we may need. Of course, the point is that when we were checking all our list of requirements, what this interface should comply with, and we were looking at e-delivery, capabilities. It has encryption, it has a level of security that is double that we need. It ensures message integrity. You can use digital signatures or sealing if you want. You can have a very important element where you are exchanging information with unknown economic operators is the non-repudiation aspect. So you can make sure if somebody has sent a message, there is proof that it happened. There is a receipt of that. You can have different technical implementations on which you can have flexibility for different kind of actors. You have the big actors that have a huge systems, and others that have a small system. So you need the flexibility to be able to allow them to work in different operational models. And of course, you need to be able to work with many different levels of sizes of messages, etc. So e-delivery is providing that huge flexibility, applying the AS4 protocol, which is actually an ISO standard right now. So, and that really made up the possibility to develop in a much easier way this interface with all the economic operators. Right now, ISA² entered into operation a couple of months ago, and it's working really nicely. And actually, I think that is mostly thanks to e-delivery that it happened. So thank you very much. That's the experience.
Thank you, Carlos. This is excellent. This is when we were talking a bit earlier about getting building blocks production ready. This comes as the perfect testimony to that. And to wrap up the panel intro, I would invite Kelly Liljemo to share with us her point of view from managing the stakeholder involvement in this building block since 2014. How do you see this evolution, and what's next?
Thank you, Adrian. Yes, I mean, everyone knows the Commission as a sort of legislator, as a policymaker, and I think here we have seen how the Commission, together with EU projects, can really implement concrete change. And we heard from the previous speakers here how they have created value in their projects and results. And I think that has been the favorite part of the job over the last years, to really see these sort of in the trenches, if you will, real results. And we've seen many across EU and even beyond. Just to kind of name a few on top of what we just heard from our panelists, we saw cost reductions in steel supply chain using e-delivery. We saw Croatia simplify access to their public services using EID. We saw Poland take action on invoicing. We saw Swedish customs manage to find a way to digitally archive decades worth of data. Recently, we saw Rotterdam open their CD archives to citizens. And we see many examples. And if we start looking at all these different examples, we see that the driver behind, like why were they using these building blocks, has been different. So some of them use them as a capability. So they focus on their sort of core business or their sector-specific work, and they say, look, I need a certain functionality to just be there. I need to authenticate users, or I need to contextualize data in real time, and they use these building blocks to solve those problems for them. We also saw, in particular in private sector, that they sometimes use this as a value proposition, to kind of almost a business model, if you will, to say, typically in a niche area, to become a qualified trust service provider, and they use these building blocks to kind of accelerate that. Or we saw them use it as an enabler to make it quicker to implement their project, or to even enlarge their market, because these building blocks are cross-border by design. We saw them use it as a platform to sort of plug into, or even just contribute their own use cases to, or as frameworks and specifications to help them define their own projects or their architectures. And with these kind of capabilities, we can do anything. And I think this is the kind of the beautiful part of it. So on top of these individual benefits and the results that we saw in these individual projects, in fact, by using these building blocks, these projects have actively contributed to the creation of the digital single market, because at the heart of this, all these building blocks are open specifications at the heart of what they are. And by using them, we start speaking the same language, and we start being able to interconnect between each other. And as a cross-border citizen myself, I find this very exciting, because I live now here in Belgium, and I moved away. I grew up in Sweden, but I don't have anymore a valid Swedish ID card. Those expired. But I can still access my public administration services in Sweden to exciting things like tax declarations. I can access them using my Belgian EID now. We saw in the chat earlier that someone with the Dutch, accessing Dutch services with the Estonian EID. So, I mean, these things work, and these are direct results from these programs and the work that has been done. And Adrian, you were also mentioning it, and I think Max earlier, how we've been building on previous work that we did. So from large-scale pilots, member states working together with private sector, academia, and so on, and sort of creating this foundation, and then we're building on that, bringing them actually out to the market through these programs. And it's been exciting to be part of that. And it's always also been kind of leverage on the investment done before. And we also saw in the intro video just now about the once only principle, how this is kind of the vision moving forward. We are taking all these building blocks, putting them together in a very large system. And how can we make this work in a very short period of time? And right after this session, we will be hearing more about that. Our colleagues will explain about that system. So yeah, I'm convinced that if we continue this path where the public and private work together in co-creation, and if we build on the investments done before and we move forward, I mean, we can create very smart services that we cannot even imagine today. and all by still keeping trust and transparency in everything that we do. So it's been quite a journey, and exciting things still to come.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kelly. And interesting to hear this this overview and the large frame picture. In the meantime, I'm told that there are some results for the polls that we launched at the beginning of the panel. And it's interesting to see that we have 77% of the attendance, of the ones that replied to the poll, that have used our solutions, the interoperability solutions and building blocks in their projects. So, and that is a good number, 77%. So that means that like a quarter of the participants were discovering now what we are talking about and why the solutions are so good. In the same time, we had the other poll running, which is whether do you believe that these digital solutions deliver value and have a positive contribution to the European digital transformation. And then we have 81% who said yes, and just a number of them were unsure. So that means that from more than 77 were aware of it, and then 81% were convinced during the panel that there is a positive added value by using our solutions. I would now turn to the panelists for questions. No?
If I can come in quickly on this one, we would love to go back to the panelists with questions, but we have heard that unfortunately we have, as a colleague said, a major test on the audience because we have a technical problem.
Okay.
So this session is being recorded, and I'm telling this to all of you here in this session. This has been recorded. It will be made available to the public through the platform, and I think also on YouTube and other channels as possible. But we need to unfortunately close it now so that we can reboot the system. So that's the beauties of an online event. Although I have to say that I was also in physical conferences where we had to reboot the system. And this doesn't mean that you go for another coffee, but it means rebooting because the lights went off and so on. So to some extent, the lights went off on this session, which is a pity. So we need to close it early. I'm very sorry for this. But maybe before I do that, Adrian, you want to say 1 minute of a wrap-up position from your side?
Thank you, Max. And first of all, I want to thank the panelists for their very valuable input into this discussion. And I hope that they shed a light. We did the whole journey coming from Joao's experience with Erasmus Plus and how that touches already the lives of our students as they go into their more transformative experiences in the exchange programs across Europe. We saw how the citizens get a better service from their government in Raf's input, and then we saw how one could have a better experience buying a second property somewhere across Europe by the interconnection of land registries. And then, of course, we saw how Carlos and the European Commission are taking care that the imports that come into Europe are safe, and there is no or very low risk associated to those customs operations. And thanking, of course, Kelly for wrapping up and having that very good input on the other countless examples across Europe of the use of interoperability solutions and building blocks. And thank you, Max, for having me for this session.
No, thank you, Adrian, and a big thank to all of you. You were great examples and great preachers of what also became a storyline throughout the morning. Remember when we discussed about the Berlin Declaration, the Tallinn Declaration, and people said it must be user-focused, it must be people-focused, and it must become a reality on the ground. And actually all of you panelists today, and now in just this session, what you did is that you put the focus on the ground and on the people, and you demonstrated what comes out for us all as users, as people, as citizens, as companies, which I think is the beauty of it. So making these lofty, generic declarations a reality on the ground. And Kelly, if I can say this, I like the sentence very much that you said with a certain nonchalance, but I saw how Adrian was positively smiling, saying, actually with this stuff, we can do anything. We can do bloody anything. Just put the Legos together and build it, but do it together. Because none of us can do it alone as good. And this is the perfect, I think, bridge then in the next session that you also already mentioned, which is about the incoming once-only principle technical implementation to the benefit of European citizens and businesses. And now we need to cut here. We reboot the system, and we are back just after 3 o'clock with a parallel session and the main stage.